Please take your seats and silence all cell phones. The program is about to begin. Please take your seats and silence all cell phones. The program is about to begin. Please welcome Martha Jackson, Chris Neale, and Shondelle Nicholls.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Neale, and I am a senior advisor in the New York City Mayor's Office of Talent and Workforce Development. We're going to start with just brief introductions, self-descriptions, and then we will get into the content of our presentation. I am a middle-aged man with red hair, glasses, a dark blue suit, and a light blue shirt. And I will turn it over to my colleague, Martha.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Martha Jackson. I am the Executive Director of the Center for Workplace Accessibility and Inclusion, a new initiative at the Mayor's Office of Talent and Workforce Development. I am a mature white woman with fair hair, blue eyes. I am wearing a black turtleneck and beige pants.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shondelle Nicholls. I am the Director of the Center for Workplace Accessibility and Inclusion at the Mayor's Office of Talent and Workforce Development in New York City. And I am a tall, black female, and today I am wearing a tan and black dress with black boots.
Great. So I want to give a little bit of context. So the program says the city is a model employer. That's the title of the session. And that's actually only part of the title. If you read the blurb about it, that piece is one component in a bigger plan. A plan that the city of New York released last year to advance the career success of New Yorkers with disabilities. And that's what we're going to talk to you about today. We are going to talk about how the city itself acts as a model employer and how our team at the Mayor's Office of Talent and Workforce Development is actively engaged in promoting that within the city of New York and our 300,000 workforce. But we're also going to talk to you about some of the programmatic innovation and the expansion of services for people with disabilities in New York City. And we're also going to talk to you about the systems change that we are very intentionally trying to advocate for in our role with the city of New York. And by the way, I was a little chagrined that the transition music to our show, to our presentation today, couldn't be New York, New York by Frank Sinatra, but I'm not going to hold that against the Harkin Institute. What can you do? The slide that is showing, for those, just to give a little description, it's a nice picture of the Midtown High Line of Manhattan with the Empire State Building in the middle at dawn. So it's a nice sort of symbolic image. Okay, so here's our agenda. Let me just walk you through what we want to talk to you about today. We're going to talk briefly about the challenge in New York City. We've heard some statistics about nationally and globally the percentage of people with disabilities who are working or not working. So we'll talk about that in New York City. We're going to give you an overview of our plan, the New York City plan to advance the career success of people with disabilities. We'll talk about some of the foundational elements because this plan didn't come out of a vacuum. There were some really key components that the city has been working on and developing for the past 8 or 9 years that were critical to the development and the implementation of this plan. We'll talk about one-stop career center accessibility. Some of you may be familiar with WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, and the one-stop center system that is created. We're doing a lot to try to make our one-stop centers in New York City more accessible and to really increase the service levels in New York City. Part of my role is, I didn't say this before, I'm actually also the director of the New York City Workforce Development Board. So I play a big role in overseeing WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act in New York City, and we'll talk more about that. Then we'll get on to the Center for Workplace Accessibility and Inclusion. It's a very large center. It has 2 employees, and they're sitting right here on the stage with me. But this center is really tasked explicitly with systems change, not so much running programs, but really finding ways to identify and address the barriers to jobs and careers facing New Yorkers with disabilities. Then we will talk about the city as a model employer and the steps that we are taking, again, as the largest employer in New York City, 300,000 strong. We're doing a number of things, including training and hiring, and we want to talk more about that. And then we'll talk about the plan moving ahead. I keep wanting to say next slide, but it's me. It's just me. Okay. This next slide has a chart that shows some of the key statistics for New Yorkers with disabilities. So we're talking about the challenges. In New York City, nearly 1 in 10 individuals who are working age, between the ages of 18 and 64, have a disability. And when you look at the percentage working and the percentage in poverty, the gap is huge. So among individuals without disabilities, nearly 80% are employed or working in New York City. Among people with disabilities, it's 40%. So it's basically half. When you look at the poverty rate for individuals without disabilities in New York City, the poverty rate is about 14%. But for individuals with disabilities in New York City, it's 32%. Again, more than double that of individuals who are not, without disabilities. So these are the challenges that we are trying to address. And it's been a big theme of this conference, right? What's going on with employment? How do we move the needle? How do we really make some big steps? And like I said before, we want to talk a lot about what we're doing both with the city as an employer, with some of the programmatic expansion innovations that we're doing and the systems change efforts that we are focusing on. This data, by the way, was provided by the Yang Tan Institute at Cornell University, a good partner of ours, and it's based on American Community Survey data. Okay, so let me give you an overview of our plan. Again, this is a plan that was launched by the City of New York last year by Mayor Eric Adams. And what's unique about this plan is it's a multi-agency collaboration. So there are 3 mayor's offices. So the mayor's office in New York City is very big, as you might imagine, with 300,000 employees. The mayor's office itself probably has about 1,000 employees. And there are individual mayor's offices that specialize in different areas, like ours, the Mayor's Office of Talent and Workforce Development. We're working very closely with the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. We're also working very closely with the Mayor's Office for Economic Opportunity. They are an office that focuses on evidence-based approaches to combat poverty and help lift New Yorkers into self-sustainability. We're also partnering with a city agency, the New York City Department of Small Business Services, and the Workforce Development Corporation, which is a city-affiliated nonprofit. So this is a unique collaboration. And I would be remiss if I didn't say too, and you'll hear this as a theme throughout this presentation, it's not just the city, it's not just government. Government's a big part, and the state is an important part. The New York State Department of Labor we'll talk about in just a moment, but they're a major part of this plan. But we couldn't do this without the private sector. We couldn't do this without extensive employer engagement. We couldn't do this without working very closely with providers that deliver services to people with disabilities. So this is really a public-private partnership through and through. And you'll hear that throughout this. So this plan encompasses all that, and there are sort of 2 really key components of the plan. The first is investing more in innovative direct services for people with disabilities. The second is addressing structural barriers by launching the Center for Workplace Accessibility and Inclusion. Again, the entirety of the center is sitting here with me on the stage. But these are key components. And the city made a really historic investment of $8 million, more than $8 million over 3 years to support a number of different elements. There's also state funds in the mix. The New York State Department of Labor, as I mentioned, they are supporting systems change through a program called New York Scion. Scion is an acronym. The first 2 letters stand for systems change. Don't ask me the rest. I always forget the rest. But it's a very important investment that the state is making. And then finally, we have this sort of key measure. It's not our only measure, but a key measure of success, which is we are striving to connect 2,500 New Yorkers to jobs over the 3 years of this plan. And we also have some systems change goals because it's not only about the programmatic goals, but that's a really important marker for us. Okay, so one last piece about the plan. So I just mentioned we have a goal of 2,500 people with disabilities connected to jobs over 3 years. This slide has a chart that shows our goals for years 1, 2, and 3. In year 1, our goal, which was last year, was 350. We actually placed 539 individuals through a variety of different methods. So we're excited about that. The plan was always intended to ramp up because some of the resources, some of the programs that we worked with wound down during the pandemic, understandably, and now we're sort of trying to wind things back up. So we have our work cut out for us for the next 2 years, but we are ahead of pace, which is terrific. And we'll continue to meet these goals through, as I mentioned before, our local one-stop career centers, which are serving more people with disabilities, through NYC at Work, which is a program that you'll hear about in just a moment, but it's a direct services program run by the mayor's office to connect people with disabilities to jobs. And then you'll also hear about the Partnership for Inclusive Internships, which is another source of job placements. And that is a program that connects people with disabilities to internships within city government primarily. Okay. And with that, we will now turn to some of the foundational elements that the key ingredients that this whole plan is based on. And I'll turn it over to my colleague, Martha.
Thanks, Chris. A few years ago, really, I think it was the second year of this initiative, the NYC at Work initiative, We actually presented here at the Harkin Summit on the beginnings of NYC at Work. I was here with the then Commissioner for the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities and my boss, Victor Calisi, and the two of us together, along with some incredible partners, really needed to address the problems that people with disabilities in the city are facing with unemployment. So I'm just going to take a minute and tell you a little bit about the people on the slide here. There are three. Carlos, he's got a plaid shirt on, he's at his office. He actually was a benefits advisor for a nonprofit, but after a year, another nonprofit stole him away, gave him more money, and made him a supervisor. The lady in the middle, she's actually preparing food. She's at the TWA hotel where she is studying to be a bakery chef. And then the woman in the wheelchair on the end worked for the Department of Social Services and then left to go into the private practice. So, could you turn the slide? Yeah, thanks. So, NYC at Work really started when Victor Calisi asked me to come and talk to him about creating an employment program for New Yorkers with disabilities. So you want to hear a little story? Because this is the truth. This is what happened. Elaine Katz from the Kessler Foundation told Victor Calisi he's not doing enough for employment. And he said, okay, then I will. The power of Elaine Katz and the Kessler Foundation continues. But because of that, Victor really wanted to create something unique, and I believed that the mayor's office was uniquely poised to be the convener for all the different entities that are responsible for people with disabilities getting connected to work. So it was just me and a phone and a computer and an idea. And with wonderful thought partners like Elaine Katz and Posis Family Foundation, we actually were able to raise the funds that we needed to create the lines for staffing, because at the mayor's office you can't have extra lines. So industry mayoral partnerships are really very key. The funding that we received was able to, we were able to hire several professionals in workforce development with expertise in all kinds of disabilities. And we needed to be sustainable. So because we didn't have the lines, we found a partner agency that would allow us to use those lines. And that was our first big partner, who continues to be our partner, and that's Small Business Services. So the original goal was to engage 21. This is what the grant actually said, engage 21, just connect with, enroll 1,500 and help 700 get connected to all kinds of jobs. So pre-COVID, we were pretty close. We actually had 689 folks connected to jobs. In the private sector, we had 550 jobs. I'm going to tell you a little bit about government. Chris, could you? So we had to build a program because it didn't exist. But there were also things that did exist in the city that a lot of people didn't know about, including me. I was new to the city. There's a program that's part of the civil service law. It's called 55A, and it allows New Yorkers, qualified New Yorkers with disabilities, to gain access to city jobs without having to take the civil service exam. This is another way in, and it was a huge secret. So we really decided that we had to address this, and it did take 2 years because there was language in the bill that seemed very antiquated. It had been around since the 70s. But once we understood the possibility, we partnered with the agency that actually is responsible for the civil service training, DCAS, or Department of Citywide Administrative Services, because they all have a million names. And we created a summit for all of HR, all of EEO, to let everybody know what is 55A and how can you utilize it to make our workforce diverse. Well, you can imagine the excitement when everybody found out that they don't have to go over the civil service list anymore. They can actually find talent another way. In the past, maybe 0 to 4 people would be hired through 55A on a regular basis because it was on the onus of the job seeker to figure this out. But we hired someone specifically to help with government employment, both in the city and the state. And in a short period of time, through the 55A program, 80 individuals were connected to jobs, all through 55A. An additional 20 were connected to jobs, whether through the civil service or appointment, whatever. So we went from 0 to 4 to over 100 in 2 years because the process that we put in place worked. Next. The other thing that we needed to know is how are we going to help people with disabilities understand their financial freedom? I don't know if you all have experienced this, but for so long, we had people coming to us saying, I can only take part-time work because I need my benefits. So with the help of the City Community Foundation, National Disability Institute, and New York City's Department of Consumer and Worker Protection, we put together the city's first financial counseling program for New Yorkers with disabilities and their families for concise, accurate information so you can make choices about your future. Can you turn this on? Oh, thanks. So during the pilot, I just want to share that 667 New Yorkers participated in over 1,100 counseling sessions. We were able to help folks save collectively over $425,000 in the pilot, and most people were able to save about $25,000. Now, the Empowered NYC initiative is integrated into the financial empowerment centers throughout the city, and there are counselors now in the Workforce One career centers specifically trained in financial counseling for people with disabilities. So people are educated, they have choice, and they know what's going to happen to their money before they go to work. Next.
So I mentioned this at the beginning. So part of our work is making our local system of one-stop career centers that are funded by WEOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, more accessible. There are 18 centers we have across New York City. They serve about 100,000 people a year. And so they're accessible to almost anybody as long as you're 18 years of age or older. So one of the things that we have done is we have intentionally placed 10 financial counselors who've been trained in Empowered NYC within the largest Workforce One career center. So we have 5 boroughs in New York City, and in each borough there's one major large center, and we have a couple of counselors in each of those. The other thing that we're doing to expand our services is we've taken NYC at Work, which Martha described, right? A mayor's office-based program, and we have expanded it into one of those centers. This is our first test center in the Brooklyn Workforce One Center. We have 3 staff that are embedded there, and they are tasked with serving job seekers with disabilities. And part of their role is to provide some level of training and guidance to the other staff members, because there's probably about 30 staff members that work at that location. So the goal is to make that center more accessible over time. These staff provide intensive services to job seekers with disabilities seeking employment. They help with career advising, resume building, connecting folks and preparing them for job interviews. They also engage businesses that are seeking to hire candidates with disabilities. One of the key strategies that they have used is targeted recruitment events where they can match multiple employers to pre-screened candidates that are interested in the jobs that are available. And it is our goal to expand into additional one-stop centers. We wanted to test this, get the model right, and then expand it into other centers. And the biggest volume we see is at those big 5 hub centers, we call them, one in each borough, and that's really where our focus is because so many people come through those doors. I mentioned this earlier, SCION, the New York Systems Change and Inclusive Opportunities Network. There we go, there's the full acronym. And again, this is through the vision of Governor Kathy Hochul of New York and the New York State Department of Labor, but they've been fierce advocates to invest more in the one-stop system across New York State by providing some resources to local areas to hire people that are tasked explicitly with advancing systems change. The goal is to assist and train 45,000 people statewide with disabilities, with a primary emphasis on these WEOA Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funded one-stop career centers. some of the things that we're trying to integrate this Scion program across all of our 18 Workforce One career centers. We like to call our local flavor NYC Scion, and it really does leverage the expertise and the relationships of mayoral offices, as well as the high volume system of our one-stop centers, which we locally call Workforce One career centers. So some of the things that the Scion staff are involved in is building partnerships and collaborations with community-based organizations and employers, making sure people have access to benefits advisement, developing and launching IRTs, integrated resource teams, coordinating disability etiquette and awareness training for staff, digital accessibility trainings and workshops for some of the partner agencies that we work with, providing some training for the Workforce One, otherwise known as the one-stop centers, the staff and employers as well. And the Scion team will also be launching fast-track recruitment events for people with disabilities. Fast track is where we have an agreement with a partner organization. They let us know they're going to send some people that are pre-screened for an opportunity, and we will screen them and then get them to a job interview very quickly. So this is an incredible partnership with New York State. Again, they're contributing funding in the mix as well, and we are really trying to use that funding as well as some of our own to transform the way our local one-stop centers deliver services and become more accessible to people with disabilities. And with that, I'm going to turn it back.
So let me just tell you a little bit about this new initiative. It's just a year old. Actually, yesterday was Shondelle's first year on the job. The Center for Workplace Accessibility and Inclusion. In New York, you have to have an acronym. So this is CWAI. You can say it. You don't have to, it's okay. So CWAI, we're really helping oversee programming and working across all city agencies, including our private partners, businesses to identify and eliminate the barriers for people with disabilities. And so some of these initiatives are, as Chris mentioned and is in the title, is positioning the city as a model employer. Because frankly, if we don't do it, how can we ask businesses to do this as well? So some of the things that we have started doing in the short time that we've been at New York City Talent, we've started to engage our key stakeholders. And we've created an advisory council of about 18 really fabulous individuals across all sectors to help us understand best practices and to work together to increase the accessibility and opportunities for job seekers. We also have to really look at our youth because they are the future workforce. And some of our partners include New York City Public Schools, special education, and then the City University of New York. Because as Chris mentioned earlier, maybe 1 in 10 in New York, disability, but come on, we all know that's just people that disclosed. So there are many, many more people with disabilities who have not disclosed and maybe are not providing services. But I just want to give you a little snapshot of what City University of New York is looking at. There are 26 campuses across the city. They only have about 11,000 students who have disclosed. More than half neurodiverse or learning disability, and the other half mental health. So if we don't really start addressing this while the young people are in school, giving them the opportunity to explore the world of work, to be part of internships for that wonderful dual exposure that comes for the individual job seeker and for the business, we're never going to be able to get the kinds of opportunities for our young people that they deserve and that we need, because the people that work for the city should look like the people that live in the city, and that means all of us. We are also launching some new programming, which you're going to hear about in a little bit. We are looking to raise private fundings for some of our new initiatives, and we're trying to really, with all of our collaboration partners, advance a realistic policy agenda through collaboration. I can give you an example of the Medicaid, Medicare buy-in, which we have been working on for some time, and also to support the state as a model employer as well. Next slide. So some of the great things that we've already been able to do We've been very fortunate. The chair of our Accessibility Council, the CWAI Council, is Angela Lean from Microsoft. She's been an incredible supporter. And through her efforts and the efforts of everybody at Microsoft, they have worked with our training agency, DCAS, and next month we'll be launching digital training accessibility for all New York City employees. That's all 300,000 plus New York City employees. And the reason is because the city council passed a law that every city agency has to be compliant in 5 years and accessible. But who's teaching people how to do that? You can do the law, but if there's nothing backing it up, we're not going to do so well. And so with the partnership with Microsoft, we're able to train our employees, making everything accessible. We're also improving accessibility among city agencies. We now sit in an area that is completely full of the new workforce initiatives under Talent and Workforce Development. So we are embedded with them. We are working with them to make workforce initiatives accessible and inclusive, and we're learning from them about what we need to do to be able to get up to speed. We are increasing the New York City diversity hiring and advancing culture change in city agencies by hiring, once again, full-time employees through the 55A program and other options. And then this wonderful new program, well, new for us, but not new for the city of New York, is a Partnership for Inclusive Internship. And I actually want the person that's really been running this for a very long time to talk about this unique experience. Please, Hannah, would you come up and share with us about the success of Partnership for Inclusive Internships, or PI?
Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Milson. I'll do a brief description of myself. I am a white woman in my 30s. I have blonde hair pulled back into a bun, and I have a green sweater on today. Again, thanks, Martha, for inviting me up to speak about the Partnership for Inclusive Internships. This is a collaboration between AHRC New York City and New York City government that started in 2019. AHRC New York City is a large service provider for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in New York City. But the PI program works with people with all types of disabilities. And we provide structured internships within the public sector. We work with 14 now city agencies and a number of state agencies and federal agencies based in New York City, to create this internship opportunity. This is a 3-year demonstration project with Martha's team at Talent. And we hope to bring it much further. We found that it's been really successful because we know internships are a very effective way to move people into employment. They're a great way for people for whom the traditional internship or interview process is not successful. Internships can be a great way to get your foot in the door. One of my favorite stories recently is an intern who came through the PI program named Ryan. He's working at the Department of Transportation. He's someone for whom the traditional interview process wouldn't be effective. He's someone on the spectrum. His social skills don't quite match the interview process. He's been doing an internship with the Department of Transportation where he reviews footage of bus stops across New York City, of which you can imagine there are many. His supervisor thought he would do 20 to 50 over the course of his 3-month internship. And within 2 weeks, they said, he's done like 2,500 reviews of this thing. So how do we bring this guy onto our team full time? And that's the kind of success that we like to see in the program. We're creating advocates out of the supervisors that are supporting our interns without having to do all that much except for connect a great intern with talent to an excellent internship in the government. As you can see on the side, we've placed, at this point, over 250 interns through the PI program. Our internships are unique in that they're a very wide range, of jobs in this career sector. As you can imagine, with over 300,000 employees in the city of New York, there's a lot of different sectors to join. So our interns are working in cybersecurity, in things like architecture, in data analysis, public policy, human services. So it's a very, very wide range. And we're working to both, break down sort of stigmas or stereotypes around what kind of work people with disabilities can do through internships, but also work with our job seekers, our interns, on what does it really mean to work in civil service and work for the government. It doesn't just mean public policy or being the mayor. There's a lot of different jobs that go into working for the city. So we're doing a little bit of information on both sides there. One other unique part about the internship program is that it's free to the city in terms of the supervisors and the city agencies don't pay for it. Our interns are paid through state VR dollars, so we're able to sort of connect all the dots, bring in the right support, bring in the disability etiquette training so that it's a win-win-win for the city, for the supervisors, and for the interns. So we're finding it's a really effective program to sort of slowly build, as I said, advocates within the city who really are fighting hard for their interns to be hired by the city, and that makes our city more inclusive. So thank you, Martha, for giving me a chance to speak about the PI program.
But I have to give a shout out because if you notice, PI is one of the Zero Project awardees for 2025 for innovation in government. And I'll also let you know that in 2021, NYC at Work was also an awardee of PI, no, I guess I'm hungry, I keep talking about PI, for the Zero Project. And that has a lot of meaning to us, to be recognized for the work that we are doing. And we're very grateful to Hannah and everyone at AHRC for really changing the way people in government have options and access to government jobs. Thank you.
And I definitely want to give a shout out as well to the Taft Foundation, New York City Department of Social Services. They were a huge part of the PI program. And now I'm going to transition into public-private partnerships. So throughout the presentation, you would have been hearing the theme of connecting, collaborating, and partnerships. And that's because we cannot do this important work alone. I think you all know in the room, it takes a village. And with the size of New York City, we are determined to connect, collaborate, and partner with as many people and organizations as we can to make New York City more accessible and inclusive, not only specifically for people with disabilities, but for everyone, all New Yorkers living in New York, visiting New York, which I've heard some of the folks here are gonna be doing soon. Hope you have a great time. And now I'm going to just highlight some of our partners, and for the partners at home who are not highlighted, we appreciate you, but we couldn't mention all today. So Wells Fargo. So we, CWAI, had the pleasure of hosting the neurodiversity workshop last month, and Wells Fargo and UConn, the University of Connecticut, they did such a wonderful job. There was a cohort of 10 public and private organizations that attended, and they really educated them on how to implement neuro-inclusive practices. And we are definitely still having conversations on how we can build on that momentum, because that's a really great workshop. Next up, Martha talked about the City University of New York and their LEADS program for students with disabilities, linking employment, academics, and disability services. And we're really going to be working with them to enhance career pathways through career exploration, job readiness, you name it. And again, New York City has a very competitive workforce, so we need to make sure that these students with disabilities have the tools, access to companies, resources, services, programs in order to be successful in that competitive market. Next up is NYC ETC, a really great partner. I have to give a shout out to Greg and Stephanie. They're wonderful. And this partnership here is very special to me. We're going to be working with NYC ETC so that we can help mainstream workforce providers adopt one accessible practice. I know you're thinking, why only one? We're going to start with one. This is fairly new, so we want to make sure that we get it right. And we all know the mainstream workforce providers, they work with people with disabilities, but they might need some help becoming accessible, inclusive, and that's what we want to do. And as Martha says, we're not going in waving a finger. How can we help you? How can we do this together? And another partnership with the NYC ETC that we're looking forward to. Earlier this month, we were able to host the New York State Commission for the Blind, and Microsoft was actually there, and they did a wonderful presentation on AI and disability. And after the meeting, everyone was so excited about Copilot and how they can integrate it into their professional and personal lives. And a conversation came up, and the state VR staff and the partners were very excited and interested, in actually working with the mainstream workforce providers to figure out, like, how can we best approach and help the participants that are going into those programs with undisclosed disabilities. So we are looking forward to convening that session. Next up, New York City Public Schools. So we have gained such a wonderful relationship with the Special Education Office, and we've been connecting them with so many existing services and programs, and we want to make sure that the New York City students with disabilities are transitioning into training, internships, employment. And speaking of internships, one of the connections that we actually made with the New York City Public Schools was with the PIPE program that Hannah just talked about. And they have hosted, we made this connection in the summer, and they've already hosted over 10 interns, and they're so eager to host more. So we're definitely looking forward to hearing those success stories and how that turns out. Next slide. All right, our CWAI Advisory Council, and Martha mentioned earlier, Angela Lean from Microsoft is actually the chair. So on the screen, we actually have some of the logos of those organizations that are on the council, and they're 18, and they're public and private. And they're gonna be really helping to advise city agencies on workforce development strategies, helping us identify additional partners. Again, we can't do it without the partners, and elevating best practices. And some here, Microsoft, Wells Fargo, we have Restaurant Associates, we have some of our public sector partners there, and educational institutions. And this is very exciting. We can't wait to see what's gonna come out of these collaborations. Thank you, Chris. Oh, co-design. I love this co-design project. So New York City is investing in new and innovative ideas to design workforce development programs for people with disabilities. How often do you hear about funding agencies inviting the community to the table to actually be a part of the design process for the workforce programs that they will be using? Exciting. Oh, okay, I'm more excited than you guys, but it's okay. So this is exciting because some of those community stakeholders that are going to be at the table are job seekers with disabilities who will be participating in these workforce programs, the workforce providers that will be managing the workforce programs, and the employers that will be utilizing these workforce programs to hire people with disabilities. And earlier this year, my colleagues here, Chris and Martha, actually talked about the multi-agency collaboration. Again, those collaborations, and I just want to remind you of the actual partners that are involved in this. Our office, New York City Talent, the Mayor's Office of Economic Opportunity, Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities, New York City Small Business Services, and the Workforce Development Corporation. And we were able to release an RFI, request for information, and that was to get feedback from the community about this co-design project. And we received 30 responses, and I think it's really great that that feedback from the community is actually going to inform and shape the RFP, the request for proposal, that we're anticipating in 2025. So keep an eye out for that. Okay, next. And looking ahead, of course, we want to leave you with some of the stuff that we're excited about, that we're looking forward to. New York City at the NYC at Work program that Martha talked about earlier. She spoke about there in the Brooklyn Workforce One Center, and we're definitely looking forward to that being expanded into more Workforce One centers throughout New York City. The Advisory Council, we're excited about them designing an accessibility framework and a resource toolbox for the public and private sector. And CWAI will be assessing the disability landscape. And I mean, you can't really talk about structural barriers, accessibility, inclusion without really addressing the policy challenges. So that's something we're going to be doing. And the PI program, of course, we're going to be looking forward to expanding that into more city agencies. I mean, we're not stopping at city, state, federal. And then we're going to use those learned experiences from the public sector to expand it into the private sector. And last but definitely not least, increasing citywide data collection for all workforce programs, really to capture New Yorkers who disclose as having a disability. And that concludes our presentation. Our contact information is here on the screen, but we will be in the room for the next 15 minutes if you want to grab our business card or so. Thank you so much.
Do we have the ability to take questions from the audience? We have about 3 minutes left, so I want to give folks a chance. I don't know if we need to get mics out. Yeah?
Give me 1 moment.
No problem. Thanks for your patience, folks.
Thank you. This is really refreshing. You can probably tell by my accent that I've got a really bad USA one, but I've got a reasonable UK one. What's really refreshing, it's the first time I think in 30 years I've heard from a municipality that they have actually wanted to change things. Martha said, if we can't do it, no one else can. I've heard that so many times, and if I had a dollar for every time I've heard that, I'd be a very rich man. But it's the first time I've seen a place actually do the work, and I'm sure you're on that journey, and it's quite difficult at times to do that. There's a slight question I have, and that's around learning disabilities. At this summit, I feel it's the sector of disability that's not seen. I don't see them on stage. I don't see students on stage. I think you had a bit around your supported internships. How many people with learning disabilities managed to get onto that supported internship? And when I mean learning disabilities, I mean someone maybe with a Down syndrome. And do you manage to use that successfully?
Can you hear me? So I don't know if I have the actual data on the disabilities. I could probably get them for you, but they're hard to get because people don't disclose. The truth is that we serve everyone. If you want to work and you're able to work and you have no barriers from your families and no financial situation that you only have to work a certain amount of time, I mean, if we can't help someone, and we're not doing direct services anymore, but let me give you an example of when I ran NYC at Work and the team there, we would serve anyone who was interested, and we would stay in touch with them. If for some reason we could not support the kind of job that they were looking for, we would partner with an organization or a business to make sure that that person had the goals that they wanted to attain. And the other thing is that we stayed with, the NYC at Work program stays with someone throughout 2 years. The other thing too is that a number of people would stay in a job for a bit, come back and want something better, and we would help them get, I just see we're out of time. We would help them attain the kind of work that they're looking for.
I just want to add one last quick point, Robert. We are in an unusual position where our mayor, Eric Adams, has self-disclosed dyslexia. And it's a big, important part of his personal narrative, overcoming that to eventually rise to state senator, Brooklyn Borough president, and now the mayor of New York City. So it is a public figure who is self-disclosing, and there's much more of an emphasis on assessing for dyslexia within the New York City public school system. So I just wanted to make that point. But we are out of time. Our contact information is up here on the screen. We look forward to, we'll be here after the session, and we look forward if you want to email us with any questions. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank
and we appreciate
you.
it.